The tale unfolds on a gruesome battlefield, where the earth is drenched in blood and a ghastly sight meets the eye, an extensive array of mutilated corpses strewn across the ground. Amidst this harrowing war zone, Chung Myung, the 13th disciple of the revered Manhwa sect, awakens, bearing grievous injuries that push him to the precipice of death. As he takes in his surroundings, his gaze falls upon the lifeless bodies of his fellow clan members. Mentors, seniors, and juniors alike. It becomes apparent that this gruesome massacre was orchestrated by none other than Cheonma, the formidable leader of the Heavenly Demon sect. However, even Cheonma himself is not unscathed, having endured the relentless brutality of their duel. Summoning whatever strength he has left, Chung Myung rises from his wounded state, his eyes locking with Cheonma's as they exchange an unspoken acknowledgement of each other's martial prowess. Amidst their impending confrontation, Cheonma ominously warns him of the looming resurgence of the demonic forces, poised to exploit his vulnerability. With his last breath, Chung Myung harbors deep concern for the future of his once proud sect, Manhwa, as he succumbs to the weight of his injuries. In a bygone era, the Manhwa sect was a prominent member of the esteemed 10 Great Sects, a long-standing rival to the Jongnan sect. However, following the devastating war with the demonic sect, most of the sect's revered figures perished, leaving only the descendants and the remnants of their martial legacy. With the transmission of their martial arts primarily relying on visual and verbal methods, the sect's influence dwindled, leading to their eventual expulsion from the 10 Great Sects. Suddenly, Chung Myung is rudely awakened by a beggar child, who chastises him with a bamboo sword for indulging in slumber. Wincing from the pain, Chung Myung, now inexplicably inhabiting the body of a child, contemplates whether he has been reincarnated. Engaging in conversation with a fellow beggar child, he is astounded to learn that a century has passed since his legendary battle. To his disbelief, Manhwa sect has long since fallen from grace. Reluctantly, Chung Myung decides to verify these astounding claims with his own eyes. Determined to assess the state of Manhwa sect firsthand, Chung Myung embarks on his journey. However, he quickly realizes that his current childlike body lacks the vigor and stamina he once possessed. Succumbing to exhaustion, he collapses helplessly. In the face of adversity, Chung Myung decides to turn his vulnerability into an opportunity. He conceives the ingenious idea to teach himself martial arts once more. Finding a secluded spot, he endeavors to relearn the foundational technique of equilibrium, a practice that purifies the body. Gradually, he manages to harness his energy and channel it to his Dantian energy center. Weakened and famished, he seeks sustenance from the locals. However, he inadvertently crosses paths with a group of belligerent beggars who seem intent on confrontation. After defeating the belligerent beggars with ease, Chung Myung rushes to the current head of the Manhwa sect, seeking admission. Upon arriving at the sect's headquarters, Chung Myung, with his distinctive black hair and striking pink eyes, greets the head with a warm smile. Chung Myung's usual carefree and playful nature is apparent, but beneath that cheerful exterior, there lies a deeper determination when he sets his mind on a goal. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. Who is the funniest Manhwa MC? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now, back to the recap. As Chung Myung makes his request to join the sect, the head informs him that they have ceased accepting new members. Behind his seemingly innocent smile, Chung Myung conceals a simmering frustration. In a flashback, we learn that after enduring countless hardships to reach his destination, he finds the Manhwa sect in shambles. The training grounds are now mere dirt, and the once proud temples have vanished. However, he understands that it is not the current leadership's fault, acknowledging their struggle to prevent the sect from fading into obscurity. Chung Myung also discovers that one of the sect's most cherished artifacts has been sold off. Returning to the present, he wholeheartedly implores the sect's leader for a chance to join. To his surprise, the leader agrees, expressing the sentiment that they do not turn away birds seeking shelter. The head instructs his aide to prepare for the entrance ceremony and offers Chung Myung guidance. However, upon arriving at his quarters, Chung Myung realizes it's a shared room. Almost immediately, he gets into trouble when another student mistakes him for a thief. A fellow student named Jeol begins to yell and scream at him, inciting a commotion. Suddenly, their training master, Ungum, appears. Chung Myung introduces himself, and Ungum advises him to rest for the upcoming training. The next day, Jeol attempts to assert his seniority and bullies Chung Myung, attempting to mock him. However, Chung Myung's strength and martial skills are far superior, and he effortlessly forces his seniors to bow before him after a thorough beating. After gaining the upper hand, he questions Jeol about the fate of the temples. Jeol reveals that after Cheonma's demise, the remaining forces of the demon sect marched on Manhwa and set it ablaze, causing severe damage and tarnishing the sect's once proud legacy. Later that day, the instructor calls Chung Myung to join the ongoing training session. To his surprise, Chung Myung finds that the children are being taught sword techniques he has never encountered before. Believing that these techniques are hindering the students' progress, he enters the training grounds with skepticism and inquires about their curriculum. His disappointment grows as he witnesses a seemingly useless technique being used as a graduation test. Determined to improve the training and unleash the potential of the students, Chung Myung takes matters into his own hands. He gathers all the students early in the morning and announces that they will train together every day during this time. As the sun rises, Ungum finds the students exhausted and resting on the ground while he continues his rigorous training. With his persuasive eloquence, Chung Myung convinces Ungum that all the students have agreed to this intensified training regimen, assuring him that no one has complained. As time passes, Chung Myung becomes accustomed to life at the temple and learns that the current sect leader is weaker compared to the Manhwa sect leaders of a century ago. Nevertheless, he remains resolute in his determination to elevate the sect to new heights of strength. Meanwhile, other students voice their grievances about Chung Myung to Jo Jeol, attempting to persuade him to confront their new peer. However, Jo Jeol remains steadfast, refusing to entertain their complaints. Instead, he seeks out a senior disciple named Yun Jong for a private discussion. In their conversation, Jo Jeol states that the sect has been weakening, but Chung Myung's arrival has ignited a newfound determination to excel in their training and aspire to lead the world in martial arts. Yun Jong shares his sentiments, aligning with Jo Jeol's perspective. Unbeknownst to them, Chung Myung eavesdrops on their conversation from the vantage point of a nearby tree. Suddenly, a large group of men enters the temple through the main gates. These individuals are revealed to be debt collectors who have come to settle the financial debts owed by the Mount Hua sect. These debt collectors were once merchants who lent money to the sect. As they make their way deeper into the temple, Unam and Ungum attempt to obstruct their path, but prove ineffective. The debt collectors steadily advance toward the sect leader's quarters. It is during this confrontation that Gong, the owner of the Taiwa Pavilion, steps forward and delivers a final warning to the sect leader. Gong insists that the Mount Hua sect must repay their debt within 7 days, or else they will seize the temple as collateral. The sect's fate hangs in the balance as the deadline looms ominously. Upon overhearing the troubling revelations and gathering information from fellow students, Chung Myung becomes convinced that something has gone awry regarding the Tuo Pavilion's ownership. He decides to take matters into his own hands and disguises himself before venturing out to meet with the merchants. Meanwhile, during the earlier meeting with the debt collectors, it is revealed that Gong has already devised a scheme to seize the Hua Temple. The temple will subsequently be sold to Mount Hua sect's enemies, who are more than willing to spend vast sums to obliterate the sect's very existence. As the meeting concludes, Chung Myung encounters a drunken merchant who was part of the gathering. He attempts to extract information from the inebriated merchant, but the man's bodyguards swiftly intervene to protect their employer. Undeterred, Chung Myung resorts to a degree of force to extract the information he seeks. Eventually, the merchant begins to divulge critical details. From this conversation, Chung Myung learns that the sect's dire situation has been exacerbated by exorbitant interest rates imposed on their loans. Furthermore, he discovers that all the businesses in their vicinity once belonged to the sect, but were somehow appropriated by the representatives. In an unexpected turn of events, one of the bodyguards springs back into action, rushing at Chung Myung with hostile intent. However, Chung Myung, with his formidable martial skills, easily overpowers his assailant. After dealing with the altercation, Chung Myung returns to the temple and instructs the other students to resume their training. As he contemplates how to protect the sect from its impending doom, Chung Myung realizes that if he can find evidence proving the businesses once belonged to the sect, they might be able to avoid repaying the merchants while safeguarding their reputation. After careful consideration, he narrows down the location of the old account records, surmising that they may be near the sect leader's residence. Determined to unearth these crucial documents, he sets out on a mission. Searching the entire mountain, even a relatively small one, proves to be an arduous task. Consequently, Chung Myung decides to employ his unique martial techniques to locate a hidden underground space. His plan is to use these abilities to uncover the storage room, believing that this method will lead him to the evidence he needs. As he presses forward with his clandestine operation, the fate of the Mount Hua sect hangs precariously in the balance. Despite enduring extreme exhaustion and persevering through a series of trials, Chung Myung presses on in his quest. Eventually, his determination leads him to a remarkable discovery. As he excitedly begins to dig, he unearths what he believes to be the sought-after evidence. However, upon closer inspection, It turns out to be the entrance to a hidden hallway. Cautiously, Chung Myung peeks into the hallway and spots the figure of the current sect leader. Observing the leader's demeanor, he notes a profound sadness and hurt within him. It becomes evident that the sect leader is broken by the dire situation that the sect faces. However, he is unable to express these emotions openly, as the disciples look to him for support and strength. After the sect leader departs, Chung Myung attempts to open the door, only to discover that it is constructed from Everlast, the strongest known metal. Inscrutable and unyielding, the door seems impenetrable. Examining the blade marks of the sect's technique on the door, Chung Myung deduces that this might be the key to gaining access. Despite the risks involved, he decides to use his life energy to perform these advanced techniques. With all his might, he manages to crack open the door. However, the exertion takes a toll on him, inflicting severe damage. Upon entering the room, Chung Myung finds it to be rather modest, with only 3 bookshelves. Nevertheless, he begins to search for the record book, swiftly locating the proof he needs. In addition to the incriminating evidence, he discovers numerous journals filled with techniques that the original sect leader, Jang Moon, chose not to pass on to future generations. Further investigation uncovers a letter penned by Jang Moon, addressed to the future leader of the sect. In this missive, Jang Moon delves into the ideals of the sect leader and underscores the profound importance of the sect to him. However, Chung Myung's suspicion lingers, prompting him to continue exploring. As he shifts the shelves from their positions, Chung Myung stumbles upon a concealed compartment brimming with gold and jewels. Formulating a plan, he decides to present these findings and the newfound wealth to the current sect leader. Upon witnessing the substantial pile of gold, the leader is so overwhelmed that he faints, the weight of the sect's dire predicament momentarily lifted by this unexpected turn of fortune. After waking up and conducting his own investigation to confirm the authenticity of the accounts, the sect leader decides it's time for the merchants who wrongfully appropriated the Manhwa sect's treasures to face the consequences. He summons them to the temple, and as the merchants ascend the mountain, they begin to feel a growing sense of resentment and guilt for their actions. They understand that they have forced the sect into a dire situation, potentially leading to its disbandment. Additionally, as the Manhwa sect has long protected the province, everyone involved has some sort of connection to the sect. Upon reaching their destination, Unam greets the merchants and escorts them to meet the sect leader, Hyun Jong. During their introductions, Hyun Jong, the sect leader, bows respectfully, acknowledging that while the entire debt cannot be paid, they have secured some funds. Hyun Jong politely inquires if any of the merchants are willing to extend the repayment deadline. However, Gong, one of the merchants, dismisses these statements and adamantly refuses. Unexpectedly, the merchant who Chung Myung had interrogated a few days earlier emerges from within the group. He expresses his willingness to be paid later, explaining that the Manhwa sect was a source of pride for the province, and he couldn't bear to see the temple destroyed. This declaration influences the others, except for Gong, who remains steadfast in his stance. Hyun Jong, touched by the merchant's compassion, momentarily changes his attitude and turns to Gong. He reveals the old accounts and proclaims that all the merchants will be stripped of the sect's business, with the sect taking over their profits. Gong becomes enraged and starts to shout, but the sect leader quickly silences him. The leader also offers a concession, allowing Mr. Yu and the merchant who sided with him to take a cartload of wealth with them, as their businesses have been taken over by the sect. As the merchants descend the mountain and attempt to regain control of their businesses, the soldiers stationed there permit their passage. They load their carts and start moving, discussing their next steps. Gong suggests that the sect leader is employing underhanded methods, and they should align with the authorities to reclaim their businesses. However, their discussion is abruptly interrupted when they encounter Chung Myung, who stands in their path. Upon discovering that Chung Myung hails from the Hwa sect, Gong immediately calls upon his bodyguards. However, much to their dismay, Chung Myung swiftly defeats them, leaving Gong standing alone. Determined to defend his honor, Gong decides to engage Chung Myung in combat. During their battle, Gong exerts himself, attempting to inflict damage upon Chung Myung. Yet, his frustration mounts as he perceives Chung Myung's nonchalant demeanor, appearing entirely unimpressed by the confrontation. Chung Myung effortlessly blocks and counters Gong's attacks, causing Gong to realize that he is outmatched. In exasperation, he acknowledges Chung Myung's extraordinary skill and labels him a monster. Chung Myung questions why Gong, who possesses considerable skill, would resort to running a criminal operation. When Gong offers vague explanations, Chung Myung decides to employ his interrogation techniques and finally launches his attack. Overwhelmed by Chung Myung's prowess, Gong struggles to defend himself. In a desperate bid to survive, Gong attempts to employ his special technique. However, Chung Myung intervenes and reveals Gong's affiliation with the Jongnan sect. Chung Myung then turns his attention to Gong, who is visibly upset at being exposed as a Jongnan member. Chung Myung expresses his disappointment in how the martial arts world has fallen into dishonor. Gong retorts, asserting that the Manhwa sect, having lost its techniques, was destined to collapse anyway. He suggests that the sect should be grateful to him for not prolonging the inevitable. Chung Myung, angered by this justification, shows Gong a glimpse of the sect's power before preparing to deal with him. Chung Myung then addresses the other merchants who are hiding and orders them to pay him an amount equivalent to the value of the goods in their carts. Reluctantly, they agree, fearing the consequences of resistance. After they produce the required funds, Chung Myung happily returns to his quarters, leaving the merchants to ponder their unexpected encounter. Meanwhile, at the training grounds, the disciples have started to take their martial arts practice more seriously. Jo Jeol observes his peers and is pleased to see a sense of camaraderie and bonding among them. He engages in a conversation with Yoon Jong, and both of them celebrate the positive change in attitude among the disciples. They attribute this transformation to Chung Myung's arrival, recognizing the profound impact he has had on the sect. As they return to their living quarters, Jo Jeol and Yoon Jong are surprised to find many laborers present. Intrigued, they approach the laborers and inquire about the ongoing activity. They learn that the temple is undergoing repairs, thanks to the substantial funds that were recently acquired. At dinner, they are provided with meat and 2 sets of training uniforms, further enhancing their sense of belonging and support within the sect. Later, during a conversation, Yoon Jong and Jo Jeol decide to prepare themselves for what lies ahead, recognizing the challenges and opportunities within the sect. Meanwhile, Chung Myung is at the sect leader's residence, where he is receiving treatment. Hyun Jong, the leader, inquires about what reward Chung Myung would like for his significant contribution. Initially, Chung Myung asks for the freedom to leave the Mount Hua sect occasionally, but the leader denies this request, citing regulations. After some consideration, Chung Myung requests Pills of Life, a healing elixir that restores one's health. Surprisingly, the leader allows him to leave the temple from time to time in exchange for the pills, revealing that he doesn't have access to them himself, let alone a disciple. Once his request is granted, Chung Myung is dismissed from the leader's presence. The sect leader later discusses Chung Myung with Unam and Sang, seeking their interpretation of him. They both unanimously agree that Chung Myung doesn't exhibit any childishness and emits an aura akin to that of an adult. The leader also inquires about the progress of the temple's reconstruction and tasks Sang with deciphering the recently discovered techniques. However, Sang expresses doubts, suggesting that the techniques appear too new to be a century old. Despite this, he believes that someone within the sect is assisting, but wishes to remain anonymous. Meanwhile, Chung Myung is frustrated by being kicked out and denied his initial reward. We also learn that he had rewritten the techniques and provided them to the leader. The use of many advanced techniques has taken a toll on Chung Myung's body, hindering its ability to heal properly. Hence, his request for the Pills of Life. Suddenly, a distant memory resurfaces, revealing the location of a supply of these elixirs. Chung Myung rushes to a steep cliff and enters a secret cave, determined to retrieve the pills. However, the ascent proves challenging, as the cliff lacks footholds, making the climb treacherous. Chung Myung expresses the immense difficulty of scaling this steep mountain, and just as he loses his grip, he manages to cheat death thanks to a safety rope he had prepared, saving himself from a potentially fatal fall. Chung Myung, determined to reach his hidden cave, employs a technique to gain momentum and ascend the steep cliff. However, the strain on his body becomes too much to bear, and his bones start to break. He curses his physical limitations but perseveres, eventually locating the entrance of his hideout. He builds up momentum to enter the cave when suddenly his rope breaks, causing him to fling across the entrance. Fortunately, he still manages to reach the cave's interior. Inside, he discovers the snow and plum blossom pills he had previously concealed due to their remarkable healing properties. Chung Myung consumes one of the pills, initiating a process of purifying his ki to absorb it. With unwavering focus, he continues the purification, allowing the energy to enter his dantian. This infusion of power causes him to glow brightly, and miraculously, his body rapidly heals, with all fractures and wounds closing. It becomes evident that Chung Myung's body is highly compatible with ki intake via pills. However, the ki starts to overflow, and his dantian walls begin to break. Attempting to suppress the overflowing energy proves futile. In this moment of crisis, Chung Myung recalls a conversation with his late master and heeds his advice, letting the Kai flow freely. As a result, he finds himself in his upper dantian, where even its walls are on the brink of breaking. Through his master's wisdom, he manages to overcome the situation and returns to the human realm. Shocked by the experience, Chung Myung realizes the incredible power within him and decides to leave the cave, taking the pills with him, believing they can aid the others. Reflecting on the fond memories of his past life, he heads back to the Manhwa sect, leaping through the air and descending the mountain. Meanwhile, at the disciples' lodgings, the students wake up in the freezing night to commence their special training. Some students discuss how Chung Myung's condition has been deteriorating, wondering if they can halt their rigorous training since the primary reason they embarked on it was Chung Myung's seemingly invincibility. With Chung Myung's recent illness, some of the disciples discuss the possibility of taking him down if they were to gang up on him. However, their discussions are abruptly halted when Chung Myung arrives, looking healthier and more energetic than ever. He offers an apology for not being able to properly oversee their training during his illness, and now that he is back in good health, he encourages them to train even harder. Chung Myung sets a challenging task for them, instructing them to climb Lotus Mountain and imposing a significant punishment for the slower half of the group. Yeonjong and Jo Jeol eagerly head out and start their climb, while the others follow, albeit at a slower pace. After the exhausting climb, everyone, except Yoon Hun-jong, collapses from exhaustion. Chung Myung appears unfazed by the physical exertion and fatigue. Following the climb, they have a meal, and Chung Myung distributes blossom pills to everyone, significantly increasing their power, even affecting Eungum, who previously displayed remarkable mental strength. The sect leader then arrives, asking to speak with Eungum. He presents a technique book that Chung Myung found, leaving Eungum speechless. The book contains a note from the previous sect leader, advising them to adhere to the original equilibrium techniques. Eungum briefly considers the suggestion, believing that the will of the ancestors should guide the successors. However, he decides against it, as the sect lacks time for adjustments, and the students have already become accustomed to their current techniques. Thanks to Chung Myung's training, the students have developed the fundamentals of the old technique, which the sect leader notices. Eungum suspects that Chung Myung had a hand in this development, and indirectly asks him about their future techniques. Chung Myung's response astonishes the sect leader, leading him to make the decision to revert to the original fundamental technique of the Manhwa sect. Chung Myung expresses his frustration with the sect leader and Eungum, claiming that the Hwa sect is useless without him. As time passes, the Manhwa sect becomes prosperous once again, resolving its financial issues and gaining renown thanks to the students' diligence. However, Chung Myung remains puzzled as to how they ended up in such a mess. According to Jo Jeol, the problem lies in the management of the Manhwa sect's businesses. He asserts that most of the previous workers left after the sect reclaimed the businesses, and the sect leaders lack business acumen. Jo Jeol adds that the Manhwa sect's survival is only possible thanks to Elder Huang's sponsorship. In a sudden turn of events, Eungum tasks Chung Myung with delivering a letter to the Yeonhwa Merchant Guild, which belongs to Elder Huang. Naturally, on his way to deliver the letter, Chung Myung opens it and discovers distressing news. The letter reveals that Elder Huang is extremely ill, with uncontrollable ki energy and unconsciousness. Moreover, it mentions that numerous doctors have failed to diagnose his condition, and a substantial reward is offered to anyone who can provide information about the disease. As Chung Myung continues reading, he learns that the illness is referred to as the demon's flower, which exhibits symptoms similar to poisoning. Although dangerous, Chung Myung doesn't seem overly concerned. He explains that the demon's flower manifests after the victim has been subjected to various techniques of the Heavenly Demon sect, the same sect he had sacrificed his life to thwart. Determined to see Elder Huang with his own eyes and earn the reward, Chung Myung decides to help despite the risks. Back at the temple, Jo Jeol and Yoon Jong find a note from Chung Myung, informing them of his absence for a few days and requesting them to cover for him. Chung Myung finally arrives in Zion City and reflects on his memories of the city. In a flashback, he recalls an incident where he encountered some cocky martial artists in the city who turned out to be members of the Jongnan sect, a longtime rival of the Manhwa sect. The Jongnan sect members provoke and ridicule Chung Myung and his sect, leading to a swift and one-sided confrontation where Chung Myung defeats them effortlessly. During this encounter, Chung Myung reveals that the various sects in the vicinity are sworn enemies, constantly competing to prove their superiority. As a result, the Manhwa sect had opted to avoid direct confrontations with the Jongnan sect and shunned Shanxi City, choosing to steer clear of trouble. Chung Myung's wandering tendencies set him apart from his fellow sect members, who preferred to avoid confrontations with rival sects and stayed away from Shanxi City. In the meantime, at the guild, Elder Huang is undergoing another examination by a doctor, but his condition remains a mystery. Elder Huang's son, Jong Hui, is deeply concerned about his father's deteriorating health. Suddenly, Mok Seong, an elder from the Jongnan sect, arrives and suggests that they face reality. He claims that the only way to treat Elder Huang is through a Taoist ritual, but appears to have ulterior motives. Finally, Chung Myung reaches the temple's entrance and Zhong Hui goes out to greet him. However, he is disappointed to see only a seemingly greedy young boy. Zhong Hui inquires about the purpose of Chung Myung's visit and learns that he possesses knowledge about the unknown disease. Due to the interference of Moxiong, Zhong Hui initially doubts Chung Myung's ability to help his father and asks him to leave. However, Chung Myung recites all the symptoms of the demon's flower, which correctly match the undisclosed symptoms of Elder Huang. Hearing this, Zhong Hui sees a glimmer of hope for his father's recovery and invites Chung Myung to examine Elder Huang, much to Moxiong's disapproval and anger. As Chung Myung reaches the nearly lifeless state of Elder Huang, he realizes that the condition is even worse than he had expected. Nevertheless, he begins his examination and manages to make a slight improvement in Elder Huang's condition. This minor progress drives Zhong Hui to the brink of elation, and they engage in a conversation. Chung Myung reveals that healing Elder Huang is not too difficult, but the root cause of the illness must be determined. He suspects that the disease is being inflicted by an insider who has been exposing Elder Huang to their demonic ki over an extended period. On the other hand, Moxiong is furious with Chung Myung for his behavior and for being allowed into the merchant guild despite being a disciple of a lower-ranking sect. His anger is further fueled by his extreme hatred for the original Chung Myung and his frustration with the new child who shares the same name as his despised predecessor. A second-class disciple of the Zhongnan sect who is sitting with Moxiong suggests that they should chase Chung Myung out to resolve the situation. However, Moxiong disapproves, fearing that such an action would tarnish their name and legacy. His words carry an underlying message understood by his students. As the disciple leaves, Moxiong reflects on the past, emphasizing that they couldn't hold a candle to the Manhwa sect during his youth. He is determined to prevent those times from returning, so that the Zhongnan sect can maintain its prominence. Meanwhile, a second-class disciple named Songbek locates Chung Myung on the premises and introduces himself. He challenges Chung Myung to a duel, which Chung Myung eagerly accepts. However, as the battle is about to begin, Chung Myung taunts and provokes Songbek, further fueling his excitement. Just as the battle starts, Songbek rushes at Chung Myung and launches a powerful and fearsome attack. Chung Myung effortlessly blocks the attack, reading the trajectory of Songbek's sword. Despite Songbek's repeated attempts to damage his opponent, Chung Myung continues to parry his attacks with ease. Songbek becomes frustrated that his supposedly exceptional skills are being effortlessly countered. In his impatience, he unleashes a highly advanced technique, only to snap back to his senses upon hearing one of his peers cry out. He barely manages to halt his attack, but Chung Myung is still sent flying into a wall at high speed, sustaining heavy damage and vomiting blood. Songbek is left perplexed and concerned after witnessing the extent of Chung Myung's injuries. Unlike anyone he has encountered in the past, Zhong Hui stumbles upon the one-sided battle after hearing the commotion. He is shocked to find Chung Myung injured and orders medics to rush in for his treatment. Witnessing Chung Myung's condition, Zhong Hui is furious with Songbek. He believed the Zhongnan sect to be righteous, but is disappointed by the outcome of the fight. Zhong Hui tells Songbek to leave the guild immediately. Moxiong also arrives at the scene, trying to calm Zhong Hui down. However, his presence only further enrages Zhong Hui. Moxiong agrees to leave the guild with his students, but asks Songbek to stay and work towards regaining Zhong Hui's trust. Later that night, a suspicious man enters Chung Myung's room and attempts to kill him while he sleeps. However, Chung Myung is not asleep and anticipates the attacker's arrival. He easily dodges the man's attacks. Zhong Hui and his guards arrive, revealing that they orchestrated this situation to lure out the real culprits. The mysterious man is identified as Jabok, a general of the Merchant Guild. Jabok tries to convince Zhong Hui that he is not the one who poisoned Elder Huang, claiming he wouldn't harm someone who treated him well. However, Chung Myung decides to take matters into his own hands. He gets hit on purpose by Jabok's attack to prove that he is the poisoner with evidence. Despite the evidence against him, Jabok refuses to go down quietly and attacks Zhong Hui and his guards. Songbek, realizing the situation, intervenes and battles Jabok to defeat him. After a long, intense battle, Songbek eventually subdues Jabok after an hour of fighting. With the enemy captured, Chung Myung expects his reward from Zhong Hui, who promises that it will be delivered once his father is fully cured. Despite his confident demeanor in front of everyone, Chung Myung admits to himself that he is still unsure if he can truly heal Elder Huang, as he is not at his peak strength. Nevertheless, he decides to give it his best shot and attempts to connect his ki to Elder Huang's body to combat the demonic ki within. Using the pure ki from the blossom pills he consumed earlier, Chung Myung easily subdues the demonic ki within Elder Huang's body. However, the demonic ki decides to retreat to the Elder's head, a place that Chung Myung cannot directly attack. Chung Myung then allows the remaining demonic ki within Elder Huang's body to enter his own, causing him intense pain and agony. Before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out at Julius Moonstar 8942, who commented, "Since you're continuing to narrate the Divine Surgeon and intending to continue, I've dropped a sub for your troubles on our Divine Surgeon video. Thanks for commenting." Despite the excruciating pain, Chung Myung manages to pull himself together and confront the demonic Kai within him. With no place to escape, the demonic ki fights back fiercely in an attempt to take over Chung Myung's body. In a last-ditch effort, Chung Myung uses all the ki in his denshin to dispel the demonic ki once and for all. Although the battle was grueling and pushed Chung Myung to his limits, he manages to emerge victorious and narrowly cheats death. Soon after, Elder Huang regains consciousness, and the crisis at the Yonhua Merchant Guild is resolved. General Jabok, the instigator of the plot, is captured and reveals his motives. He is the son of a rival merchant seeking to obtain the wealth of Elder Huang, and admits to acquiring the demon sect's technique after stumbling upon a dead body containing the demonic ki. In recognition of his heroics, Chung Myung is treated like a VIP and given a feast. Elder Huang appears before him and makes a request. First and foremost, he bows his head in gratitude towards Chung Myung, the individual who miraculously cured his debilitating illness. In his humble gesture, he expresses his profound thanks and beseeches Chung Myung to divulge what he desires as a token of appreciation for saving his very life. However, Chung Myung, with a sense of urgency compelling his actions, laments his inability to obtain permission from his sect prior to rushing to assist. Consequently, he earnestly requests that this incident be kept clandestine from his sect and proposes a substantial monetary reward in lieu of recognition. Elder Huang, wise and contemplative, ultimately concurs with these proposed rewards. Later, Zhonghui visits his father and engages in a heartfelt conversation where he outlines the potential perils associated with reducing interactions with the influential Zhongnan sect due to a new policy. Nevertheless, Elder Huang, unwavering in his belief that the Mount Hua sect's growth will yield substantial profits, persuasively argues in favor of aiding them in their current state. Despite some initial reservations, Zhonghui ultimately places his trust in his father's strategic insight. Meanwhile, as a result of indulging in numerous sumptuous meals, Chung Myung unexpectedly encounters Songbek once more. In a solemn exchange, Songbek presents him with a wooden sword and challenges him to another duel. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.